Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking with Dr. Lisa Piercey. She is the commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Health. We're talking about the vaccine rollout in the state of Tennessee. We have a ton of calls, and I'm going to get right to the calls here. I had expected at some point someone would have asked about side effects. Certainly that was in the news today, that we've seen some side effects from some of the vaccinations that have happened in Britain. And so I want to just ask you briefly before we start taking more calls, what about side effects? Are you concerned by reports of side effects from people who have taken it in Britain?
So what we heard out of Britain this morning is that there were 2 individuals, and I don't know how many vaccines they gave in the last day or 2 in Britain, but it was in the thousands. And there were 2 individuals that had a history of severe allergic reactions, something we call anaphylaxis. That's the type of condition that needs an EpiPen. These are life-threatening reactions. They had a history of that with other substances. I don't know if it's medication or food or whatever. And they also had a reaction after this vaccine. It's important to note that with any product, with any new antibiotic that you take, with any kind of food, and even if you've eaten that food before, some foods are more allergenic than others. Shellfish and nuts come to mind. With any kind of medicine or food or substance, there's always a chance of an allergic reaction. The last data that I saw is that you can expect about 1 severe reaction for every 1.4 million doses. So that's pretty rare. It's pretty low risk. But because of the 2 reports that we saw yesterday coming out of Britain, if you have a history of severe anaphylaxis, so mostly those people are the ones who carry around the EpiPens, you should probably discuss that with your healthcare provider before you get a vaccine, because like with any type of new medicine or vaccine and any other vaccine, you could be at higher risk of a severe allergic reaction if you have a history of that.
Do you consider that a setback? I mean, are you disappointed? Would that make you less inclined to take this vaccine?
Not at that number, it would not. Obviously, it's still very, very early. But people don't think about it, but there are some pretty serious allergic reactions that happen all the time. If you get a new antibiotic, or you can develop a shellfish allergy even if you've eaten it in the past. And so it's pretty rare statistically. It doesn't discourage me, because we know that the most common side effect is pretty much like what you get with other vaccines. You might have a sore arm, you might feel achy and tired for a day, maybe about a 30% chance of a headache or a low-grade fever. Like I mentioned earlier in the hour, doctors think that's sort of a good thing. We kind of get excited about that, because that means your immune system is doing what it's supposed to be doing and revving up your body so you can fight off that virus. And so that's just sort of a mild side effect that we're expecting to see.
All right, let's take more calls. Let's go to Bob. Hello, Bob.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you for my call. My question is, if you had COVID and recovered, should you get the vaccine, or should you assume you're immune and it's not really worthwhile getting the vaccine? And if you say that you still need the vaccine, would those that had COVID-19 be much lower on the priority in receiving the vaccine?
All right, good question. What about that?
Yeah, Bob, that's a great question, and something that we're actually discussing with the CDC. But the short answer is that whether or not you've already had it, you need the vaccine, because what we still don't know is how long the immunity from having the infection lasts. We initially thought it was around 3 months. Just saw an article this morning that indicates that it might be closer to 6 months. And so we encourage everybody, whether they have had the infection or not, to go ahead and get it. They are not prioritized any lower. You don't get lower down the list just because you've been infected. We do anticipate the CDC, actually through that ACIP, Advisory Council on Immunization Practices, may issue some guidance on that, but we expect them to say immunize everybody regardless of infection status.
Well, let's go to Helen. Hello, Helen?
Yes, good evening.
Go right ahead.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is in regards to the vaccine in patients with lupus or other autoimmune diseases. To my understanding, the vaccine is working with RNA to stimulate your immune system. Could this cause a flare in their condition?
Okay.
So that's a great question, Helen. And with any type of what we call immunomodulator, which is a big fancy word for something that revs up or activates your immune system, people with autoimmune disorders need to discuss that with their doctor, because as you mentioned, I'm not talking specifically about the COVID vaccine, but any kind of vaccine or certain medications can cause a flare of your autoimmune disorder. So that is something on an individual basis that you need to discuss with your doctor. But also, in the same token, people with autoimmune diseases sometimes are more susceptible for infection, and they're the ones who need the vaccine the most. And so be sure and talk to your doctor about that, but it's a great question and something you should definitely be concerned about.
Let's go to Don. Hello, Don.
Yes. Thank you, Ben, for having me. I'd like to ask the doctor a question about, I think the woman, she just asked my question that I wanted the doctor to see if she could follow up on. If they can fast track this coronavirus vaccine for this particular virus, how come they can't do it for all these other autoimmune viruses that are out here? And with this vaccine, will this help other people with other conditions, other viruses?
Okay. All right. What about those questions?
Yeah, so the good news about this whole process, which I'm sure you're familiar, has been termed Operation Speed, has really been a true testament to American innovation and the ability to really invest in something that can be brought to market quickly but safely to benefit the American people. Obviously, I don't have to tell you, because I know you're very aware. This has been something that has created incredibly severe disruption to our society and to our economy. And so our both state and federal government partners have put every resource possible to get this vaccine into arms as quickly as possible in order to take down some of that disruption that we've seen. You make a very good point that there are a lot of conditions that can benefit from this type of accelerated innovation. It's a little bit harder because of the scale is a lot smaller, but it's something that our government thought was very, very important to tackle so our society can get back to normal. Regarding other conditions, there are very few what we call contraindications. So there are very few conditions that cause you to not need the vaccine or that you shouldn't get the vaccine. Really, it's pregnancy or breastfeeding, or right now children under 16 currently aren't expected to be approved for the vaccine immediately. As the previous caller mentioned, you need to talk to your doctor if you have those autoimmune disorders or other special conditions that you think might cause you to react a little bit differently. But what I'm really excited about and what they talked about at the White House summit yesterday is how the technology that's being used for this vaccine can actually be leveraged to treat some of the things in the future that completely unrelated to coronavirus. This is a technology that can clearly be effective quickly. And so I'm really looking forward to the next 3, 5, 10 years to see what other conditions this type of technology can address.
Well, that is good news. Okay, and quickly, so you're saying 16 and under should not take it. If you were 17, should you take it?
So I want to be clear, this is not about safety. This is just about having enough data for the FDA to approve it. And so all of the phase 3 clinical trials have been essentially in adults. And that doesn't mean that it's unsafe for kids or that it's necessarily unsafe for pregnant and breastfeeding women. It just hasn't had enough time to be studied in those special populations. So when the FDA hopefully gives their approval tomorrow and then again next Thursday for Pfizer and Moderna respectively, we will get the exact details on how young we can give this vaccine. We've been told that Pfizer may go down to 16, Moderna may stop at 18, but as soon as they get enough kids in those vaccine trials, in phase 3 trials, we expect that age to go down pretty quickly.
All right, we will take a break, come back, ask more questions. I'm going to ask again about teachers, because I know there's so many people that are hoping kids can get back to school. We'll take a break, be back right after this.